They say silence is golden. But sometimes, silence is a warning, a deep, unsettling kind of quiet that wraps around you like a thick fog before the storm. As I sat alone in my dimly lit living room, the weight of 24 years of marriage pressed heavily against my chest. My wife, Kelly, had stepped out for groceries. But something inside me twisted. Call it intuition, call it paranoia. But I knew, something was wrong. What I didn't realize was that in just a matter of weeks, my life would unravel in ways I never imagined. And when it did, I wouldn't be the one left broken. It's strange how the smallest moments can shatter an entire reality. 1 second, you're living life as usual, going through the motions, waking up next to someone you've spent decades with. Sipping coffee in a house built from shared dreams. The next, the foundation beneath you crumbles, and nothing will ever be the same again. That morning was supposed to be like any other. The sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the bedroom. The scent of fresh coffee lingered faintly in the air. A comforting presence I had come to associate with Kelly's routine. She had already left for the day, early as usual, citing meetings and errands. I wasn't in a rush to get up. There was something about mornings in an empty house that always made me linger in bed a little longer. The quiet was peaceful, but today, it carried an edge, an unshakable weight pressing against my chest. Maybe it was just the anniversary looming in the background. 24 years and 6 months. A lifetime, really. With a sigh. But I still felt like I had years ahead of me. Twisting the cap, I shook out a single pill, but as luck would have it, the damn thing slipped right out of my palm. I watched as it bounced off the edge of the table and disappeared beneath the bed. Cursing under my breath, I swung my legs over the side and knelt down. The floor was cool against my hands as I reached blindly underneath, fingers brushing against the occasional dust bunny and stray sock. Then, I felt it. Something thin. Crinkled. My fingers closed around it instinctively. The moment I pulled it into the light, my heart stopped. It was a condom wrapper. For a few seconds, I simply stared. My mind refusing to process what I was holding. It was old, creased, as if it had been wedged there for a while, but unmistakable. The brand, the color, the familiar tear along the side. My stomach tightened into a hard knot. Why was this here? Kelly and I hadn't used condoms in years. Not since our first child was born. And after Lucas, our second, I had gotten a vasectomy. It was a mutual decision, one we had made together. There was no reason for a condom to be anywhere in our home, let alone beneath our bed. A dozen explanations fought for space in my mind. Each more implausible than the last. Maybe it was old, something left from before we switched to other methods. Maybe one of our kids had been reckless during a visit. Maybe. No. No one else had been in this bed. Kelly and I had been empty nesters for months. Lucas was in his senior year, Emily had just started college. There hadn't been any guests, no parties. No moments of youthful indiscretion from a teenager sneaking around. It was just me and her. And suddenly, the silence of the house felt suffocating. My fingers clenched around the wrapper as my breathing grew uneven. A slow, creeping realization settled in, a thought so dark, so deeply unsettling that I almost rejected it outright. Kelly had always been predictable. Routine-driven. Even when she was busy with work, she made time for our anniversary, for family, for me. But lately, things had changed. She had been distant. More tired than usual. Her schedule had become erratic, filled with unexpected late nights and weekend errands. And when I reached for her in bed, there had been more than one occasion where she pulled away. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. I should have. A bitter taste filled my mouth as I forced myself to breathe. Don't jump to conclusions. There had to be a rational explanation. There had to be. But no matter how many possibilities I grasped at, my mind kept circling back to the same horrifying possibility, one that felt like a dagger twisting in my chest. She's cheating on me. The thought sent a fresh wave of nausea rolling through me. I pushed myself to my feet, still gripping the wrapper as if it held all the answers I needed. My heart pounded against my ribs, demanding action. But what was I supposed to do? Confront her? No. Not yet. Not without proof. If I came at her with nothing but an old piece of plastic, she would deny it, spin the story, maybe even turn it on me. I needed more than suspicion, I needed certainty. And I knew exactly who could get it for me. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone, scrolling through the contacts until I found the name I needed. Daniel Carter. A friend. A private investigator. Someone who could find the truth. My thumb hovered over the call button, but I hesitated. Once I made this call, there was no turning back. If I was wrong, if this was some massive misunderstanding, then I would have to live with the knowledge that I had doubted the woman I had loved for more than 2 decades. But if I was right. I pressed the button. A single ring. Then another. Then. Daniel speaking. I swallowed hard, my voice barely above a whisper. I need your help. The moment I ended the call with Daniel Carter, a weight settled in my chest. This was it. The point of no return. If I was wrong, would have to live with the guilt of doubting Kelly. But if I was right, well, I wasn't ready to think about what that meant just yet. The drive to Daniel's office felt longer than usual. My fingers gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. My knuckles turning white. The city blurred past, a mess of lights and movement, but I barely noticed. My mind was a storm of what-ifs. What if she really was cheating? What if I had been blind for months? Years? By the time I pulled into the parking lot of Daniel's firm, my pulse was hammering. I climbed out of the car, taking a deep breath before stepping inside. Daniel was waiting for me in his office, leaning back in his chair, feet propped up on the desk. He didn't need to ask what was wrong. One look at my face, and he sat up. All traces of casual amusement vanishing. Talk to me, he said simply. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told him everything, the condom wrapper, the late nights, the shift in Kelly's behavior. With every word, my voice grew tighter, my throat constricting around the raw truth I didn't want to acknowledge. Daniel listened, nodding occasionally, his sharp eyes scanning my face. Tracking her movements, checking phone records if possible. But before we go down this road, you need to ask yourself, are you ready for whatever I find? The question hit like a punch to the gut. Was I? I need to know, I said firmly. Whatever it takes. Daniel nodded. Then we do this right. No rushing, no jumping to conclusions. Give me a week. A week. It felt like an eternity. The next few days were torture. I went about my routine like nothing had changed, pretending everything was fine. But in reality, I was watching. Every move Kelly made. Every excuse she gave. Every time she picked up her phone and smiled at a message I couldn't see. Daniel worked fast. He installed a GPS tracker on Kelly's car, set up discreet surveillance. And even managed to access some of her phone records through legal means. The first few days, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Work, errands, home. But then, on the 4th night, everything changed. Daniel called me at exactly 9:47 p.m. She just left work, he said. But she's not going home. My breath caught. Where is she going? Daniel hesitated. I'll text you the location. You need to see this for yourself. I didn't even respond. I grabbed my keys and bolted out the door. The location Daniel sent me was a hotel. A discreet, upscale place on the other side of town. One I had never been to before, but one that Kelly clearly had. I parked a few buildings away, my stomach twisting into knots as I spotted Daniel's car already waiting. He stepped out as I approached, his expression grim. "She checked in about 15 minutes ago," he said. "Room 214. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. "Is she alone?" Daniel didn't answer right away. Instead, he handed me a camera. "Take a look for yourself." With shaking hands, I flipped through the photos he had taken. Kelly, smiling, laughing, walking into the hotel with another man. A tall, broad-shouldered guy with a neatly trimmed beard. Someone I didn't recognize. Someone who wasn't me. My hands clenched around the camera. I wanted to storm inside. Tear the room apart. Demand answers. But Daniel's hand on my arm stopped me. "Not here," he said firmly. "Not like this." I swallowed hard, forcing myself to think. Daniel was right. A confrontation here would only make things worse. I needed proof. I needed to be smart. "What do we do next?" I asked. My voice rough. Daniel's eyes hardened. "We get more. If she's been seeing him, this isn't the first time. We track them. We find out who he is, how long this has been going on." I exhaled slowly, nodding. "Okay." As I turned back to my car, I stole one last glance at the hotel. The lights of room 214 were on. And I wasn't the one inside. The cold reality of what I had just witnessed in front of that hotel still hadn't settled in by the time I reached home. The house felt different, like a place I no longer belonged. I sat in the darkened living room, the only sound was the faint ticking of the clock on the wall, each second stretching painfully into the next. Kelly wasn't home yet. She wouldn't be for hours. If her previous patterns meant anything. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, but my hands trembled too much to lift it to my lips. Instead, I let it sit on the table, untouched. My mind racing through the images Daniel had shown me, Kelly with another man. Laughing. Holding his hand. Walking into a hotel room with no hesitation. A stranger. A man who wasn't me. I had spent years trusting her, believing in the bond we built over 2 decades. And now? Now, I was nothing more than an afterthought. The next morning, Daniel called. His voice was calm. But I could hear the underlying tension. "I've got more," he said. "Meet me at my office." I didn't hesitate. I drove there like a man possessed, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. Daniel was waiting for me, a thick folder on his desk. A weight I could already feel pressing down on my chest. He didn't speak right away, just slid the folder toward me. "Before you open it," he said, voice measured, "you need to know this isn't just a one-time thing. She's been seeing him regularly. Different locations. Different nights. This has been going on for at least 6 months. A dull ringing filled my ears. 6 months. I flipped open the folder, my eyes scanning over the photos. Kelly and him at a restaurant. Kelly waiting for him outside a different hotel. The timestamps confirmed it all. Every picture was another knife in my gut. Another piece of my life being torn apart. Then Daniel handed me an audio file. "I managed to get a recording," he said quietly. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to hear it." I hesitated. Did I? I pressed play. At first, static. Then, voices. Her voice. God, I don't know why I'm still with him. He's just boring. Predictable. He does everything for me, and I can't even bring myself to care anymore. My breath caught in my throat. Then. The other voice, his voice. Then why not leave him? Kelly laughed. Laughed. Because I need him to pay the bills, James. Let's be real, I'm not exactly going to struggle when he's covering everything. The file ended. The silence that followed was unbearable. I clenched my jaw, my hands gripping the chair so hard it creaked beneath me. Daniel watched me carefully, but he didn't say a word. He didn't need to. I had my proof. She didn't just cheat on me. She used me. I drove home on autopilot, my mind blank. My body tense with something I wasn't sure I could control. Rage. Disgust. Betrayal. The front door swung open, and there she was, Kelly. She looked up, startled. Hey, I didn't hear you come in. For the first time, I really looked at her. Not as my wife. Not as the woman I had built a life with. But as a stranger. A liar. I had planned on confronting her. Demanding the truth. But as she smiled at me like nothing had changed, I realized, I didn't need to. She didn't deserve my anger. She didn't deserve to see how much she had broken me. Instead, I forced a smile. Work was long, I said, keeping my voice even. I'm going to take a shower. She nodded, oblivious. Oblivious to the fact that everything had already fallen apart. I locked the bathroom door behind me, gripping the sink with both hands. Trying to steady myself. I had to be smart. Daniel was right. A confrontation now would only make things worse. If she saw me unraveling, she'd prepare. Lawyer up. Hide assets. I couldn't let that happen. Instead, I had to act normal. Pretend like I didn't know. And then? Then I would make her pay. I picked up my phone and dialed Daniel. I want everything, I said. Bank records. More surveillance. I want to know every single detail before I make a move. Daniel exhaled. Are you sure? This is gonna get ugly. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, at the man I used to be, the man she had destroyed. I'm sure. Kelly wanted to use me. Take advantage of me. Make a fool out of me. She had no idea what was coming. I sat in my dimly lit office, the glow of my computer screen casting shadows across the room. My mind was no longer clouded by emotion, no anger, no sorrow. Only clarity. I had all the proof I needed. The photos. The timestamps. The damning recording of Kelly admitting to using me for financial security. The betrayal had cut deep, but I refused to let it consume me. Instead, I would turn it into fuel. Kelly had made her moves in secrecy. I would do the same, but my checkmate would be public. Step 1: Securing my assets. The first call I made was to my financial advisor. Daniel, I said, keeping my voice calm, I need to restructure my accounts. Effective immediately. He hesitated. Are you in some kind of trouble? Not me, I replied. But I need to ensure that if something were to happen, my assets wouldn't be easily accessible. Daniel understood. Within hours. I had moved half my liquid assets into a separate account under a trust in my name alone. I had also adjusted the house ownership, ensuring that Kelly couldn't claim it outright if things escalated legally. The moment she stepped out of line, she would have nothing to fall back on. I wasn't going to let her take another dime from me. Step 2: Destroying her affair. The next step was more delicate. Kelly wasn't just betraying me, she was sleeping with her coworker. James Reynolds. James had a wife, Melissa, a woman I had met a handful of times at office parties. A woman who, as far as I knew, had no idea that her husband was cheating on her. That needed to change. I reached out to Daniel Carter, my investigator. "I need you to deliver everything to James's wife," I said. Anonymously. Within 2 days, Melissa received a carefully compiled folder, complete with photos, text logs, and the audio recording of Kelly and James's conversation. I didn't have to wait long for the fallout. Melissa exploded. She confronted James at his office in front of everyone. A public humiliation he would never live down. The office buzzed with whispers of the scandal, and before the week was over, James had been placed under investigation for professional misconduct. It seemed the company's no fraternization policy had some serious consequences after all. Step 3. The perfect deception. Kelly had no clue what was happening behind her back. For the next week, I acted like nothing had changed. I still kissed her cheek in the morning, still asked about her day. Still played the role of the loving husband. But every time she smiled at me, I saw her for what she really was. A liar. A fraud. "Honey," she said one night as we sat in the living room. "I was thinking, our anniversary is coming up. We should do something special this year." I forced a smile. I couldn't agree more. "I actually have something big planned." Her eyes lit up with excitement. "Really? Like what?" "It's a surprise," I said smoothly. "But trust me, you won't forget it." She leaned in and kissed my cheek, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath my skin. "Oh, you won't forget it, Kelly." Step 4. Setting the stage. The plan was almost complete. But I needed one final piece, a stage big enough for Kelly's downfall. So I made a call. To her parents. "Hey, Mark," I said to her father, keeping my voice steady. "I was thinking, since this is our 25th anniversary, maybe we should make it something special. A party. A real celebration of our love." Mark was thrilled. "That's a fantastic idea, son. I'll reach out to friends and family. We'll make it a night to remember." Oh, it would be. I also made sure Kelly's boss was invited. The same boss who was overseeing James's professional misconduct review. The guest list grew, filled with family, friends, co-workers, everyone who thought Kelly was the perfect wife. They would all be there when the truth was revealed. Step 5. The final touch. 2 days before the party, I made one last preparation. I had edited the damning audio recording into a short video presentation, one that would be displayed on the large projector during the party. It would start as a beautiful montage of our years together. Our wedding. Vacations. Our children. And then, it would shift. Kelly's voice would echo through the speakers for all to hear. "God. I don't know why I'm still with him. He's just boring. Predictable. He does everything for me, and I can't even bring myself to care anymore." Then James's voice. "Then why not leave him?" Followed by the final nail in her coffin. "Because I need him to pay the bills, James. Let's be real, I'm not exactly going to struggle when he's covering everything. There would be no denying it. No excuses." Her entire world was about to crumble in front of everyone she cared about. And the best part? She had no idea it was coming. Final preparation. The calm before the storm. The night before the party, Kelly curled up beside me in bed, resting her head on my chest. "I love you," she murmured sleepily. I stared at the ceiling, my heart cold. "I love you too," I lied. Because after tomorrow, I would never have to say those words again. The stage was set. The pieces were in place. Tomorrow night, at our 25th anniversary party. Kelly's perfect life would come crashing down. And I would be the one holding the wrecking ball. The night had finally arrived. The grand 25th anniversary celebration that Kelly had been eagerly anticipating. She spent the entire day getting ready, picking out the perfect dress, fixing her hair just right, making sure everything was flawless. She had no idea that this night would mark the end of her perfect world. I watched her from across the room as she twirled in front of the mirror, admiring herself. She turned to me, beaming. "You're going to love this, Daniel. It's going to be a night to remember." I smiled back, my expression unreadable. "Oh, I know it will be." The house was buzzing with life. Friends, family, colleagues, all had come to celebrate our so-called milestone. The atmosphere was warm, laughter echoing through the grand hall as people raised their glasses in cheer. I moved through the crowd, shaking hands, exchanging pleasantries, all while keeping my true emotions carefully hidden beneath the mask I had perfected. Kelly was in her element, glowing under the attention. Every now and then, she would glance at me and smile as if she truly believed we were still that perfect couple everyone admired. It was almost impressive, how well she lied. But that would soon come to an end. At the peak of the evening, when the drinks were flowing and laughter filled every corner of the room, I tapped my glass. The room gradually fell into silence as everyone turned their attention toward me. Kelly stood beside me, holding my arm, her eyes bright with excitement. "I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for being here tonight," I began, my voice steady and clear. 25 years is a long time. Kelly and I have shared a life full of memories. And I thought it would be special to take a look back at some of those moments together. I gestured to the large projector screen positioned at the front of the room. The lights dimmed. The video began. At first, it was exactly what everyone expected, a nostalgic montage of our life together. Pictures from our wedding day, family vacations, birthdays, moments with our children. There were murmurs of appreciation from the guests, a few smiles, even a tear or two from Kelly's mother. Then, the tone changed. The next image flashed onto the screen, grainy but unmistakable. Kelly walking into a hotel lobby. A shift in the room. The murmurs turned into hushed whispers. Another image, Kelly and James, her lover, at a candlelit dinner, holding hands. Gasps. Then, the final blow. The audio recording. Kelly's voice, clear and undeniable. "God, I don't know why I'm still with him. He's just boring. Predictable. He does everything for me. And I can't even bring myself to care anymore." The room was frozen. Then came James's voice. "Then why not leave him?" And then, Kelly's damning response. "Because I need him to pay the bills, James. Let's be real, I'm not exactly going to struggle when he's covering everything." The recording ended. Silence. Complete and utter silence. I turned to look at Kelly. She was pale. Her mouth slightly open, her entire body rigid as the weight of what had just happened crashed down on her. Her father was the first to break the silence. "Kelly, please tell me this isn't true," he said, his voice thick with disbelief. She turned to me, her eyes wide with desperation. "Daniel, please, this isn't what it looks like." I held up a hand, cutting her off. "Don't. Just don't." Her mother's eyes welled with tears. "My God, is this what you've become?" People began shifting uncomfortably, some whispering to one another, others simply staring in open shock. James, standing across the room, looked utterly humiliated, his face drained of color. But before Kelly could even attempt to salvage herself, Melissa, James's wife, stepped forward. "You home-wrecking piece of garbage," she spat at Kelly. You think you could just sneak around and not get caught? Then she turned to James. We're done. I've already had the divorce papers prepared. Kelly's panic only deepened as her entire world collapsed in front of her. She reached for me, her hands trembling. Daniel. Please. I pulled an envelope from my pocket and handed it to her. Divorce papers. You've been served, I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. Her lips trembled as she stared at the papers. The realization sinking in that she was losing everything. And then, as if the situation couldn't get worse for her, a man in a suit stepped forward. Kelly's boss. We'll need to have a conversation first thing Monday, he said coolly. Given the company's policy on workplace affairs, this does not look good for you. Her job, gone. Her reputation, shattered. Her marriage, over. Kelly collapsed into a chair, shaking, sobbing uncontrollably. But I felt nothing. No pity. No sadness. Just satisfaction. It was over. I turned to the remaining guests, offering a tight smile. Well, everyone, I think that concludes our celebration. Thank you for coming. People shuffled awkwardly, some muttering words of support for me. Others deliberately avoiding Kelly as they left. One by one, they disappeared. Until only she remained. Kelly sat there, her head down. Still clutching the divorce papers as if holding onto them would somehow change reality. I grabbed my coat, pausing at the door. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the settlement. You can keep the dress, though. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. But I had nothing left to give her. No sympathy. No remorse. And without another word, I walked out. The night of the party felt like a distant memory, though it had only been a few months. Everything that defined my past life, Kelly, our marriage, the illusion of happiness, was gone. And I was okay with that. More than okay. I was free. After walking out of that house, I never looked back. Kelly had tried reaching out in the weeks following the disaster. Calls. Texts. Even emails laced with desperation. I ignored them all. The woman I had spent 25 years with was nothing more than a stranger now. The person I thought I knew had never existed. The divorce process was swift. Thanks to my careful planning, she walked away with significantly less than she had anticipated. Without my financial support. She was forced to move back in with her parents. The same parents who could barely look her in the eye after witnessing the truth of what she had done. James, her so-called lover, had lost his job. His wife, Melissa, had followed through with the divorce, taking half of everything. Last I heard, he was couch-surfing at a friend's place, drowning in regret. And me? I was finally rebuilding. I left the city. Too many memories haunted the streets I used to walk with Kelly, too many familiar faces who pitied me. I didn't need their pity. I needed peace. I found it in a quiet town nestled near the mountains, far from the noise, the betrayal, the past. I bought a modest cabin with acres of open land. The air was fresher here. The silence comforting rather than suffocating. For the first time in years, I could breathe. I spent my mornings hiking, watching the sun rise over the hills. Listening to the world wake up around me. My afternoons were filled with simple pleasures, reading, working on small woodworking projects, learning to appreciate my own company. I had forgotten what it was like to live for myself. At night, I would sit on my porch, a glass of whiskey in hand, and listen to the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. There was no loneliness here. Only peace. The hardest part of the entire ordeal had been my children. Lucas and Emily had been devastated. Not just by their mother's betrayal, but by the way it all unfolded in front of them. They were caught in the middle, torn between their loyalty to both parents. After the party, they had distanced themselves, not just from Kelly, but from me too. I understood why. Everything they thought they knew about love, marriage, and family had crumbled in a single night. For months, I gave them space. I sent the occasional text, letting them know I was thinking about them, but I didn't push. I didn't expect them to understand what I had done. I just hoped one day, they would see that I had done it for myself, for them. One afternoon, as I sat on my porch, my phone buzzed. A message from Lucas. "Hey, Dad. Can we talk?" A lump formed in my throat. "Of course, son." A few days later, both he and Emily came to visit. It was awkward at first, long silences, unspoken words hanging between us. But then, as we sat together, the walls began to crack. We talked about life, about my new place, about their plans. And then Emily said something that nearly broke me. "You deserved better, Dad." Those 4 words carried more weight than anything else. They understood. They had finally seen Kelly for who she truly was. And they had chosen to come back to me. I don't think I'll ever truly forget what happened. Some wounds never fully heal. But I no longer let them define me. Kelly still exists in the world somewhere. Probably living in the ruins of her own choices. I don't know, and I don't care. She is no longer my problem. I have learned to let go. Of the anger. The betrayal. The need for revenge. Because in the end, the greatest revenge wasn't the party, the humiliation, or even the divorce. The greatest revenge was moving on. I wake up every morning to the sound of birds instead of the weight of regret. I spend my days surrounded by nature instead of lies. I sleep peacefully at night knowing that I am no longer trapped in a life built on deception. I have a future now. One that belongs to me, and only me. And that? That is the best ending I could have ever asked for. Dear listeners, what would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life tales of betrayal and justice.